In comment sections, I've still engaged with people who refuse to accept TCW because it retcons the films. They'll give out various retcons that can be reconciled, just like other EU or film retcons, but because they don't like TCW, they won't put any effort into doing some critical thinking or resolve the matter. The video isn't really a TCW apologist video, but since it's relevant, I'll briefly address these supposed retcons. Anakin's character seems to be the biggest one. This is something I've already addressed. Anakin is simply at the worst points in his life during episodes 2 and 3. TCW is everyday Anakin. TCW also explored his maturing by introducing Ahsoka, forcing him to grow up so he can be responsible. Some say they prefer the slow maturing in the Clone Wars multimedia project. That's fine. There's nothing wrong about this. It's war. Sometimes in real life, kids are forced to mature when they have to take on a parental role. It's similar here. Anakin is otherwise still the same character as he is in the films. He's emotional, a struggling Jedi, rebellious, struggling with attachments, struggling with inner darkness, while trying to be a good Jedi, and he's brash and impulsive. The only one I can kind of understand is the voice change, but even then, it's not too different. This is animation where things are a little stylized. The next retcon I've seen is Ahsoka. Her being Anakin's Padawan doesn't retcon the films. There was no allusion to him not having a Padawan, even if she wasn't mentioned in Revenge of the Sith. Well, Qui-Gon wasn't mentioned in the original trilogy, but he still exists. Ahsoka being off and on her own mission isn't really relevant to the story Anakin is experiencing in the film, especially since Padme quickly becomes his main and only priority. And if you criticize the Jedi Council for giving Anakin a Padawan, well, the Jedi Council made a lot of mistakes and dumb decisions, and some would argue that was the point of the trilogy. They were basically given the Sith's plot in Attack of the Clones by Dooku and did nothing. They didn't investigate the clones right away. They sent Anakin on a solo mission with Padme, even though Obi-Wan tells them he has a crush on her, and even knowing after this, they let Anakin take her back to Naboo after their whole little moment in Attack of the Clones. And in Revenge of the Sith, Anakin can still spend the night at Padme's place during Episode 3, and the Council can't put two and two together? General Grievous's death is the key to ending the war, and instead of sending several Jedi, they send Obi-Wan alone, even though other Jedi are on Coruscant? And after learning Palpatine is a Sith, they only send 4 Jedi, so the Jedi making a dumb decision with Ahsoka and Anakin fits right in, if you really want to perceive it that way. Plus, the goal of Ahsoka was to mature Anakin after his issues in Attack of the Clones by forcing him to grow up, so it makes sense. Another retcon I've seen is being the guilds and corporate neutrality as presented in the show. The thing is, everyone knows they're guilty of sin, but they can't prove it. Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones established this, especially with Newt Gunray escaping 4 trials, and some senators are on their payroll anyway. Obi-Wan witnessed their meeting in Episode 2 with Dooku, sure, but what good is eyewitness testimony as we saw with the blockade of Naboo in Episode 1? Another big one is the inhibitor chips. I've made a video about why I think this works better, but just as for the retcon, Sam Witwer resolved this in a quote I already brought up. As he points out, Cody calls Palpatine my lord, but Palpatine isn't emperor yet, and the clones don't know he's a Sith. Some level of brainwashing is implied. I've even seen some people get upset because the Kaminoans say the clones are genetically modified to follow orders, even though the chips are basically a form of genetically modifying the clone to obey an order. On top of that, even if the Kaminoans are basically saying that they tampered with the DNA of the clones, and that's supposed to be our Order 66 explanation, adding inhibitor chips does not contradict that, as it's still an organic modification and tampering, but it's basically just an extra safeguard. It doesn't contradict, it just expands. Also, the Kaminoans don't really know the true nature of the inhibitor chips as we see in TCW. Dooku lies to them and tells them it's simply a safeguard against rogue Jedi. So the Kaminoans establishing the genetic modifications in Attack of the Clones isn't a retcon because the Kaminoans don't even know what the chips really do or their true purpose. Also, too, keep in mind that the Kaminoans were told by Dooku that the Jedi couldn't know anything about the inhibitor chips and what they did and what they were meant for, and once the Jedi started to kind of find out in Season 6, the Kaminoans were told to keep as much hidden as possible. So, sure enough, when Obi-Wan shows up in Attack of the Clones, the Kaminoans not just going to go, oh yeah, by the way, they have these inhibitor chips in there that are meant for as safeguards for rogue Jedi. They're going to keep it hush-hush and keep it quiet. They're not going to scream it out loud to the Jedi. I've seen it suggested, too, that the clones don't have free will, that they're essentially mindless droids with few exceptions, but the Kaminoans saying clones can think creatively seems to imply there is some sort of free will and free thought on their behalf. And of course, moving on, a retcon often brought up is Anakin fighting Dooku and Kenobi fighting Grievous. First off, Anakin fighting Dooku isn't an explicit retcon, it's just the implication of the line that's retconned. And while it is a little funky, it's not universe breaking. Chalk it up to poor trash talk. And as for Kenobi fighting Grievous, it could be chalked up to either poor trash talk or Grievous receiving new training from Dooku after Ventress's departure, with him only knowing combat before that due to his prior life as a warrior, which I actually think is a really cool explanation. Also, regarding the Dooku thing, Anakin and Dooku fight in the Clone Wars film that George Lucas was a major part of, and on top of that, did press for. So, if you have an issue with that, you gotta take that up with George Lucas. The other major one I see brought up is Kenobi finding out Dooku is Tyrannus. There's a whole explanation I could get into, but I'll try to sum it up by the point that the damage was done. It was too late to do anything, and even then, by episode 3, they were skeptical of Palpatine, and this might just be the canon reason why. Dooku straight up tells them in Attack of the Clones what's going on, and they ignore it anyway, so I don't see how this is too different. Even so, from in-universe, there was no real way out of this. Public opinion was already turning against them. To find out they've been fighting with an army made by Dooku would blow things out of the water. It'd be similar to if we suddenly learned the whole US army was conditioned by the Russians. How would that play out? We also don't have proof other than eyewitness testimony, and even then, they'd look like idiots for not having investigated that sooner. They can't recuse themselves from the war because not only would innocents die while they take a stand, but the Republic would lose the war and Dooku would basically take control of the galaxy via that way, letting the Sith win. So, yeah, they couldn't raise a new army. The clones had been fighting for over 2 years with the Jedi by this point. They didn't have any inherent reason to distrust them. As for why it's not connected to the chips from a few episodes back, probably because to them that matter was resolved and they moved on. Keep in mind, from the Jedi's perspective, it's basically a clone that went mad and shot his Jedi. He died, and then another clone went AWOL and died. The chips inside them were pretty much sold to the Jedi as genetic modifications the Kaminoans told Kenobi about. Yeah, Fives told Anakin that was a plot to destroy the Jedi, but Anakin clearly didn't believe him, especially once the Chancellor was brought up in that. As for Yoda's visions later, again, it's just that, visions. Yoda's quick to ignore visions, saying always in motion is the future. And it was one vision that had the Jedi fighting the clones. The rest of his visions had nothing to do with them. On top of that, we don't know the Sith Lord's plan, and acting out could be their downfall. So yeah, all in all, I don't see it as a universe-breaking issue. Even though retcons can be subjective at times, 2000's prequel haters had a long list of retcons between the trilogies. I don't think a lot of them hold up. I think a lot of the ones from TCW could be resolved. And let's say, for argument's sake, there are retcons between the films and TCW. So, there are retcons between the film trilogies. Empire says Obi-Wan's master was Yoda, the Jedi Master who instructed me, not a Jedi Master. So do we throw out Phantom Menace? Even if episode True tried to fix it by showing Yoda teaching younglings, this was after the fact fix with episode 1, which makes no mention of that, and even then, it's not really stated Kenobi did train with Yoda as a youngling except for in Clone Wars Season 6. Return of the Jedi established Leia knew her mother. Revenge of the Sith retcon that. Do we throw 3 out? Episode 4 established the Republic was 1,000 generations, but Episode 2 said 1,000 years. Do we throw that out? Episode 4 established Leia as an Organa. Episode 6 retcon that with her as Luke's sister. Do we throw that out? A New Hope established Anakin and Vader were separate people, and the early Empire scripts proved this. The Vader change came later, and Empire retconned Anakin and Vader to be one and the same, leaving Return of the Jedi to have to try to sort it out. Did we throw out Empire? A New Hope established that Jedi and Republic is ancient and long gone. The prequels revealed that it was less than 20 years. Did we throw out the whole prequel trilogy? Return of the Jedi establishes Obi-Wan takes Anakin on as his Padawan, but Phantom Menace shows he has no choice but to do it because Qui-Gon essentially made him. Do we throw out Phantom Menace? Where do we draw the line? If we're allowing wiggle room for the films, we have to allow wiggle room for TCW as well.
Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to the channel. If you liked the video, comment down below and hit that like button. Oh, and check out some of my other videos. I'm sure you'll find them in the light.